Okay, so I'm going to go a bit deeper into this concept of trust registries that Daryl nicely introduced, and I think you'll start to see some parallels to other areas outside of digital credentials where I know for myself, that's how I started to get more involved in the whole governance side of things and how trust registries could solve this human or governance issue. But start to see how trust registries could be a very valuable tool to solve some of those last mile governance identity problems with use cases like the C2PA, and ultimately just how it prevents fraud, scams, and abuse. So ICANN's mission is to help ensure a stable, secure, unified global internet. As Daryl mentioned, at Northern Block, we've been working quite closely with CIRA for the past few years. CIRA's mission is to build a trusted internet for Canadians. So all of the work we're doing with this new digital trust labeled technologies and solutions fit into there as well. And as Northern Block, we're just trying to enable trusted digital interactions through different tools. But what we have today, and thank you, Jacques, for sending this to me, we have these types of things where I receive a communication from my bank. They tell me to go sign in because they want me to view an important message. So I come onto this page, but if you look at the domain name on the top of this page, that's not actually the Royal Bank of Canada. That's a scam or a phishing website. And this happens over and over again. And Jacques and team get communications every day for phishing sites to take down these types of things. And so unfortunately, we're stuck with this on the internet today. And so when we talk about digital trust, which again, Daryl did a really good job at introducing the topic, we could all agree there's this missing trust layer on the internet. So it's great that we have secure connections through HTTPS. It's great that we have certificates, but when I'm accessing a website or just interacting with any entity, I don't know the actual entity behind that website, as I just saw with the phishing site. I don't know what their intentions are. I don't know what their authority is. So we're kind of missing the integrity. We're missing intentions. And so at Northern Block, we do a lot of work on digital credentials. And I'm showing this slide. I borrowed this slide from a partner of ours. So some of this information may be out of date right now. So don't rely on it. But there's tons of activities happening throughout the world. Just last week, this new legislative framework was passed in the European Union that is going to allow member states to issue digital credentials to their citizens in digital wallets. We have tons of fantastic work happening in the Canadian market where we're doing a lot of that infrastructure at Northern Block, so helping the provinces do the same thing, give high integrity identity credentials to their citizens, to their businesses. We're seeing Daryl showed the fake driver's license. There's a big movement around the mobile driver's license happening globally as well. So different countries are at different stages in their maturity, but it's definitely going in the right direction. And we're happy to see that they're kind of using this model of issuer holder verifier and more of that decentralized identity model where there doesn't necessarily need to be a call home from any relying party to a central authority. And we're able to do that through things like verifiable data registries. A verifiable data registry could be a web server, it could be a blockchain, it could be any location really that you want to use as a public key infrastructure, any location you want to store schemas, metadata, revocation registries. And the cool thing is we have standards that are globally accepted around here. So anyone that wants to interact within the digital credential ecosystem is able to use decentralized identifiers. They could self-assert, create them themselves. There's many different flavors of these things. These allow verifiable credentials to be issued from one party to another and presented as a proof, as Daryl explained, to a relying party. So we have all of the infrastructure, all the technology, all the standards are there. And then when we come back to that governance question, when any claim is presented, whether it's a credential claim or a proof or just anything altogether, my website, my phishing website in his example, I want to first know that the claim hasn't been falsified at any point in time, which is that technical trust that we've been talking about. I want to know afterwards that the claim has accurate representation, which is I want to know that the entity saying this is my website and I'm RBC is actually RBC. So it's more of an authentication type of challenge. And then the third one that we've been talking about a bit in the presentation today, that the claim has authority. And that's more of the human trust. And that's where we require domain-specific governance mechanisms to enable this type of thing. And so what happens in my model here is we introduce the trust registries. So I'm able to solve my technical trust problems through verifiable data registries. But if I'm a relying party and I want to know that a credential being presented to me, like the mobile driver's license was issued from an authority, or if I'm a holder and I want to know that it's actually the DMV that is offering me a credential, this is where the trust registry comes in, right? So they enable any entity to seek authoritative information and use these as inputs to make trust decisions according to their own context. And like I had mentioned in that previous slide, trust registries need to be governed by domain-specific authorities. There's not going to be one body in the world that is going to just have a list of claims and that we're going to trust them for what they do. But the one interesting thing, at least for myself and as a company at Northern Block, coming from the digital credentialing space, the more and more time we spent thinking about identifiers and claims and just trust generally, the more and more we started to think, hey, trust registries are really good for credential ecosystems, but they can provide a lot of value outside of digital credential ecosystems as well. And let me go a bit deeper into that and go a little bit deeper into how we view trust registries. So that missing trust layer that I spoke to earlier on the internet really stems from a lack of authoritative attribution, which we think trust registries could address. So really telling me that this entity owns or controls these sets of identifiers, and I can make certain claims about that based on that binding between the entity and the identifiers. And let's look at some models of this or some real world examples of this. So I was actually surprised I received the yellow pages in the mail last week for my area. So these yellow pages are still in circulation because they actually add a lot of value within a locality, right? And if I use my attribution model that I talked about in that previous slide of an entity, identifiers, and claims, well, phone book does exactly that, right? If I'm using it for search for businesses, I could find a company name. They give me an identifier that's owned by them, their phone number in the example of Yellow Pages, and then the nature of their business. So I could see, okay, Plumbing Services Inc., this is their phone number, and they offer plumbing services. So this is kind of an example of a trust registry that's existed for a long time now and hasn't died completely. We still, these things are still in use today. If I look at another example of ICAO, so this is the International Civil Aviation Organization. So they're a specialized agency of the United Nations. But what they do is they manage a master list of all authorities that are able to issue travel documents. And so what does that look like? So our phone book, we had the phone number as an identifier. This one, it's a registry of public key certificates with claims about their authority to issue travel documents. So I could see, okay, the country of example stand, this is their public key certificate, and they are authorized under this governance framework, under this list that ICAO is managing to issue passports and other travel documents on behalf of example stand. So alongside CIRA and really the group here and within the Trust over IP, which is pushing a lot of innovative thinking around this, we built a product. So this is a beta version. If you scan this QR code or go on this URL, you'll be able to test it out for yourself. But what we tried to do, just as an initial step, is say, how could we allow people to just create new trust registries? Because we talk about trust registries for issuers, for verifiers in a credential context. But if we get into the context of, I just want to know that a specific entity is behind a specific key because I want to make sure that whatever they're signing on the internet is actually being signed by them. Kind of that last mile problem for what Eric was discussing for content authenticity. There's tons of different use cases where we think this will be very valuable. And back to my point of there's going to need to be so many domain specific registries tied to specific authorities, governance frameworks. I think we're going to have a whole lot of these things. So we just wanted to create a tool that enables people to just set up these trust registries. One of the interesting things that we did is we equipped every trust registry. So if you use this and you create a trust registry, we're helping you create a decentralized identifier. And what we're doing, and this was some very interesting work with CIRA, is that we're able to create some anchoring between the decentralized identifier and the DNSSEC signed DNS records. And so what does that mean? Well, if the government of Canada runs the domain canada.ca, and they have a decentralized identifier. We allow them to put signatures in their decentralized identifier and within their DNSSEC signed DNS records that map to each other. So when I'm presented with a decentralized identifier or they're signing something, whether it's a credential or a piece of content or anything, I'm able to kind of cross-reference their DNS records. And if I have confidence that they own the website canada.ca, I'll likely have more confidence that they own that decentralized identifier. So that's some pretty cool stuff that we're doing, leveraging existing infrastructure, not changing anything. We wrote an IETF specification for that as well. So we're quite excited about that work of linking different identifiers together. And then the tool allows any administrator to manage registrant entries. It enables the trust registry to be published onto a public website for discovery purposes. So I'll show that in my upcoming slides. And then it allows anyone to do API calls to the trust registry. If I'm using a third-party application and I want to integrate these types of trust inputs into my workflows, I could call trust registries, and I'll show you how that works. We've done an implementation within our mobile wallet application. So here's a demo trust registry that we created through this tool. We put ICANN on here, but it's just to note that this is a demo completely. And so if you go on the URL there, you could see the demo, but this could be ICANN or CCNSO. Anyone could be managing this type of thing. But this is what that public website, I took a screenshot of it. This is what it looks like when a trust registry is created. And the data model could be very flexible. But in this case, if you see on the top, I'm looking at an authoritative credential issuers list. So this is a list of entities that have authority under this governance framework, under this trust registry, to issue these credentials that you're seeing. So you could see CIRA in this demo is able to issue a verified web domain CA credential. So you have a full list within here, and when records are updated, they are reflected on that public site. And I have that W3C decentralized identifier that I talked about. Everyone is equipped with, every trust registry is equipped with an identifier, and then you could see every registrant that is listed within that trust registry could have a decentralized identifier, but they also could have other types of identifiers like websites and phone numbers and other stuff. In my same attribution model, this is kind of the same thing, right? As my phone book and as my ICAO list. The model is I'm saying these are the CCTLD entities, these are their identifiers, and this makes them authorized issuers of top-level domains. And I have my CIRA example here with a real-world decentralized identifier that they have, and then they have the authority in this demo trust registry to issue verified.ca credentials. We created another one just to show that there are use cases outside of digital credentials. So this is a membership list type of trust registry. We're trying to figure out how to make these like more templated, but while maintaining their flexibility. But we do realize there's many different types of data models and trust registries that could be created. But this one says, hey, the C2PA has a list of publishers. So we have Thomson Reuters, we have the Associated Press in here. These are all dummy decentralized identifiers. But if they had a decentralized identifier based on their website, you could also imagine that they could start giving identifiers to different journalists or asset producers within there, right? So if I knew that Thomson Reuters was behind this decentralized identifier and they were signing stuff with it, they could also ensure that other entities like their journalists and asset producers are using similar identifiers that are rooted within this one. And you could kind of create a pretty interesting chain of trust where I come here, I'm able to know the identifier of the organization, and I'm able to go downstream. And what we really see with the advancements in digital credentials happening throughout the world that I talked to earlier, you could start to use these types of things to know like, yeah, okay, this is their identifier, and they could actually prove through a credential that they're actually that organization as well. So there's tons of layering you could do to create trust based on different roots of trusts and different governance frameworks. And same thing in this model, right? I'm saying these are the media outlets, these are their identifiers, and they're authorized to publish news articles under this brand or this name or this identifier. So in summary, I'm going to show two quick demos, but just to summarize what I've been talking about. So we think trust registries provide comprehensive frameworks for digital signatures. rooted in governance. Um, they ensure that digital signatures could accurately represent endpoints. So they bridge that gap that I had with my phishing site earlier. So I'm actually hitting the server, but I actually know that it's the actual entity that they're claiming to be that's behind that. We really think that trust registries offer broader solutions to internet trust beyond digital credentials. Digital credentials are one tool. There's going to be many tools that need to come together to help us achieve digital trust. We think the Content Authenticity Initiative is a phenomenal initiative and may push demand for trust registries quicker than digital credential ecosystems. That's partly because they could be deployed independently by a single governing authority without full ecosystem support. So any authority in their specific domain could use this type of tool to just create an authoritative list online, which could evolve over time, but becomes a very valuable tool in our digital trust bucket. The way the internet is decentralized just requires that same decentralized model for trust. So we're not going to have one solution. There's going to need to be many of these things, and they're going to need to be based on standards. And it's going to require many governing authorities for these high integrity, verifiable information. Another type of trust registry list, so we spun up an example here, is you could imagine registry of registries that I could use for discovery purposes. So if I'm looking for a domain-specific registry, I could come to a national registry that recognizes others. They're not making any other claims, but recognizing the organizations behind these trust registries, and I could use it for discovery purposes. I could also see here that within my DID information, I could actually see the DNS signatures, and if I did a query within the DNS server, I could see that they map, which is quite cool. So I'm going to show a couple of quick demo videos, and then my presentation is done. So this is one of those demo sites that we spun up, just that example website for ICANN. So the CCTLD authorities, and I could view this list. Anyone could come here and just surf and look at this and get some information. There's only 2 records in this for demo purposes, but I could see kind of the the identities of the credentials that they're authorized to issue in this trust registry, their search functions. I could also learn about the trust registry's governance and different information in there. But the cool thing that we wanted to demonstrate is beyond just looking at it, how from a third-party application I could connect with a trust registry, just like I could connect with a credential issue where I could connect with anyone on the internet. I want to connect with this identity, with this, which is the trust registry, and I want to add it as a connection in my device. So I'm doing this on the mobile device, which just happens to be a mobile wallet based on open standards that helps you store credentials. But I'm storing a trust registry in here. And then if I go to the next slide, and we want to show a trust registry being used in action now and providing me with a trust input to make a trust decision. I've just received a credential offer from CIRA, and they're offering me a verified.ca credential. And because I have this trust registry listed within here, I want to use it to verify, is CIRA actually authorized to issue a .ca credential to me? So I was able to check, and through my trust decision helper, I found that, yeah, they're actually compliant according to this trust registry. This is the credential offer that is being extended to me. And then I could use this to accept or decline the offer. In this case, I'll accept it. But it's just another input. And that's all we're trying to do is create more and more opportunities for trust inputs to be available for people on the internet. So that was my presentation. I'll turn it back to Daryl, but if anyone is interested in collaborating on this, we're at a point where I mentioned that the product that we build in collaboration with CIRA is in beta mode. We think there's a lot of work left to do, but what we're really interested in is collaborating with the broader community to make sure that we could build this as a very valuable tool. So it's not just built within a silo. We need to make sure we engage with more and more stakeholders. So we're at a point where we've built enough that we've proven it out, and we want to engage with the broader community. So please reach out if you're interested in collaborating, or please test out the tool if you're interested in testing it out. Thank you very much. I'll turn it back to you, Daryl.